Dragon Tales. At dawn, the sun's rays streamed through the window, warming Eragon's face. Rubbing his eyes, he sat up on the edge of the bed. The pine floor was cold under his feet. He stretched his sore legs and rubbed his back, yawning. Beside the bed was a row of shelves covered with objects he had collected. There were twisted pieces of wood, odd bits of shells, rocks that had broken to reveal shiny interiors, and strips of dry grass tied into knots. His favourite item was a root so convoluted he never tired of looking at it. The rest of the room was bare, except for a small dresser and nightstand. He pulled on his boots and stared at the floor, thinking. This was a special day. It was near this very hour 16 years ago that his mother, Selina, had come home to Carver Hall alone and pregnant. She had been gone for 6 years, living in the cities. When she returned, she wore expensive clothes, and her hair was bound by a net of pearls. She had sought out her brother Garrow and asked to stay with him until the baby arrived. Within 5 months, her son was born. Everyone was shocked when Selina tearfully begged Garrow and Marion to raise him. When they asked why, she only wept and said, "I must." Her pleas had grown increasingly desperate until they finally agreed. She named him Eragon, then departed early the next morning and never returned. Eragon still remembered how he had felt when Marion told him the story before she died. The realization that Garrow and Marion were not his real parents had disturbed him greatly. Things that had been permanent and unquestionable were suddenly thrown into doubt. Eventually, he had learned to live with it, but he always had a nagging suspicion that he had not been good enough for his mother. "I'm sure there was a good reason for what she did. I only wish I knew what it was." One other thing bothered him. Who was his father? Selina had told no one, and whoever it might be had never come looking for Eragon. He wished that he knew who it was, if only to have a name. It would be nice to know his heritage. He sighed and went to the nightstand where he splashed his face, shivering as the water ran down his neck. Refreshed, he retrieved the stone from under the bed and set it on a shelf. The morning light caressed it, throwing a warm shadow on the wall. He touched it one more time, then hurried to the kitchen, eager to see his family. Garrow and Roran were already there, eating chicken. As Eragon greeted them, Roran stood with a grin. Roran was 2 years older than Eragon, muscular, sturdy, and careful with his movements. They could not have been closer, even if they had been real brothers. Roran smiled. "I'm glad you're back. How was the trip?" "Hard," replied Eragon. "Did Uncle tell you what happened?" He helped himself to a piece of chicken, which he devoured hungrily. "No," said Roran, and the story was quickly told. At Roran's insistence, Eragon left his food to show him the stone. This elicited a satisfactory amount of awe, but Roran soon asked nervously, "Were you able to talk with Katrina?" "No. There wasn't an opportunity after the argument with Sloane. But she'll expect you when the traders come. I gave the message to Horst. He will get it to her." "You told Horst?" said Roran incredulously. "That was private. If I wanted everyone to know about it, I could have built a bonfire and used smoke signals to communicate. If Sloane finds out, he won't let me see her again." "Horst will be discreet," assured Eragon. "He won't let anyone fall prey to Sloane, least of all you." Roran seemed unconvinced, but argued no more. They returned to their meals in the taciturn presence of Garrow. When the last bites were finished, all three went to work in the fields. The sun was cold and pale, providing little comfort. Under its watchful eye, the last of the barley was stored in the barn. Next, they gathered prickly-vined squash, then the rutabagas, beets, peas, turnips and beans, which they packed into the root cellar. After hours of labour, they stretched their cramped muscles, pleased that the harvest was finished. The following days were spent pickling, salting, shelling, and preparing the food for winter. 9 days after Eragon's return, a vicious blizzard blew out of the mountains and settled over the valley. The snow came down in great sheets, blanketing the countryside in white. They only dared leave the house for firewood and to feed the animals, for they feared getting lost in the howling wind and featureless landscape. They spent their time huddled over the stove as gusts rattled the heavy window shutters. Days later, the storm finally passed, revealing an alien world of soft white drifts. "I'm afraid the traders may not come this year with conditions this bad," said Garrow. "They're late as it is. We'll give them a chance and wait before going to Carver Hall. But if they don't show soon, we'll have to buy any spare supplies from the townspeople." His countenance was resigned. They grew anxious as the days crept by without sign of the traders. Talk was sparse, and depression hung over the house. On the 8th morning, Roran walked to the road and confirmed that the traders had not yet passed. The day was spent readying for the trip into Carver Hall, scrounging with grim expressions for saleable items. That evening, out of desperation, Eragon checked the road again. He found deep ruts cut into the snow, with numerous hoofprints between them. Elated, he ran back to the house, whooping, bringing new life to their preparations. They packed their surplus produce into the wagon before sunrise. Garrow put the year's money in a leather pouch that he carefully fastened to his belt. Eragon set the wrapped stone between bags of grain so it would not roll when the wagon hit bumps. After a hasty breakfast, they harnessed the horses and cleared a path to the road. The traders' wagons had already broken the drifts, which sped their progress. By noon, they could see Carver Hall. In daylight, it was a small, earthy village filled with shouts and laughter. The traders had made camp in an empty field on the outskirts of town. Groups of wagons, tents, and fires were randomly spread across it, spots of colour against the snow. The troubadours' 4 tents were garishly decorated. A steady stream of people linked the camp to the village. Crowds churned around a line of bright tents and booths clogging the main street. Horses whinnied at the noise. The snow had been pounded flat, giving it a glassy surface. Elsewhere, bonfires had melted it. Roasted hazelnuts added a rich aroma to the smells wafting around them. Garrow parked the wagon and picketed the horses, then drew coins from his pouch. "Get yourself some treats. Roran, do what you want, only be at Horst's in time for supper. Eragon, bring that stone and come with me." Eragon grinned at Roran and pocketed the money, already planning how to spend it.